just as torrential lightning thunderstorms are coming through Pittsburgh, if I disappear, that means I got struck by lightning.
Okay.
I mean,
But what about the program?
I here's what happens. The program can go on, but I will, and I'll try to get back on. If I disappear, it's just because our electricity went out because of the storm that's coming through.
Okay.
But you guys should be good, and I'll get back on whenever I can. Actually, I can come on my phone. Yeah, I'd be able to get you on my phone. All right. So not to fear, your wingman will always be there for you, Pete.
I trust you.
I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to rename you. I'm going to rename Jim Nomad Lawrence. And then I'm going to play the music and let people in. All right.
All right, go for
There
it.
we go. And Pete Mecca, and we're good. All right. I'm going to share my sound. And then I am going to play the music. All right. Everybody who's joining us tonight for our veteran story with Pete Mecca. I'm Todd DiPastino. I'm the director of the Veterans Breakfast Club, and we do this program with Pete, Vietnam veteran, Air Force veteran, every second Thursday of the month. And tonight we have a special guest, Jim Nomad Lawrence. I was just talking to him before we went live here, and I could tell it's going to be a lively program. Jim Nomad Lawrence put 39 years in the military and then volunteered for a civilian mission in Afghanistan. He spent, by my calculation, over 5 years in a cockpit in the air over the course of his career. I mean, 5 years, if you add up all the flight hours. But this is Pete's show. And the only thing I want to say, two things I want to say, let you know. Torrential downpours and lightning storm is coming through where I live here in the South Hills of Pittsburgh. So if I disappear, it's probably because my electricity went out. But the show will go on with Pete if I disappear, and I'll come back on my phone or something like that. And the second thing I want to remind people is on Monday night, we are going to be celebrating the 81st birthday of the United States Airborne, of Army Airborne. On August 16th, 1940, the first 48 members of the parachute test platoon jumped out of a C-33, a Douglas C-33 airplane, and that marks the birth of the airborne. So we're going to talk with airborne veterans on Monday night. But I'm going to throw it to Pete so he could introduce our guest, Nomad. How you doing tonight, Pete?
I'm still kicking, Todd. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My guest tonight is Jim Nomad Lawrence. As a fighter pilot, Nomad flew 432 combat missions in North Vietnam, South Vietnam, and Laos. In total, Nomad has flown 608 combat missions in Vietnam, Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. He has logged over 7,700 hours in single-seat fighters. And when commercial aviation is thrown into the mix, he has logged over 41,250 hours thus far behind the controls of several aircraft. He may debate this issue with me, but I can guarantee you this man was born in the cockpit of a jet fighter. Nomad, my friend, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Pete. It's nice to be here.
Glad you could join us. All right, I'll tease you about being born in the cockpit of a jet fighter, but pretty darn close. You were born to fly. Tell the folks about your childhood and your early addiction to aviation.
Yeah, well, my parents always said that when I slid out of my mother's birth canal, the first thing I did was look up at the sky and point at it and say airplane. So it it kind of started from from the moment that I took my first breath outside of my mother's womb. From there, I used to beg my dad to take me to the airport where he'd drop me off. Back then you could do that. And I would stand there and watch airplanes. And then I took my first flight when I was 5. And then I started working for Jim Hankins, an FBO Beechcraft dealer there in Jackson when I was 9, washing and waxing airplanes and towing them and all that. And then I soloed on my 16th birthday, and then flew with him until I was 19, until I left for Navy flight training.
Why did you choose marine aviation?
Well, when I was 5, I begged my dad to take me to see the movie Flying Leathernecks. In fact, this T-shirt that I have on is the Flying Leatherneck T-shirt. I've had this T-shirt forever, and this is the very first time that I've ever worn it. But anyway, my dad took me to the movie, and when I came out, I told him, I said, I want to grow up and I want to be a Marine or Navy fighter pilot, and I want to fly for Delta.
All right. Tell us about your pilot training, and also the fact that you never told your instructors in the military that you already had 1,400 hours logged, and they thought that you were a novice.
Yeah, well, that's one thing you didn't want to do. You didn't want to go down there and shoot your mouth off about, well, I've flown this and that and the other. So it was better for the first time in my life. You know, I knew to be quiet. And so I did. And when I went down, I did have my commercial, my multi-engine rating, my private pilot license, but I never said a word to anybody. Went through training when we went to VT1, which was where we flew the T-34 B model. My first instructor was Captain Bob Babos, who was a highly decorated Vietnam helicopter pilot. And Bob and I later became really great friends. He went on to fly for Continental. I went on to fly for Western. But our first flight, Bob kept saying, well, would you like to do this? And I would say, sure, I can do that. And the thing that I really didn't tell him was that I had about 30 hours in the T-34B that I had flown with the Mississippi Forestry Commission doing forest fire patrols the summer before I went to Navy flight training. So I had a little bit of time in that airplane, but Bob kept asking me to, okay, you want to do this? And I said, sure. So I'd do it. He'd show me a maneuver and I'd do it. And as the flight went on, he got quieter and quieter. And then he finally said, well, why don't you go ahead and just take us back to the field? And I went back, landed. And of course, I'm grinning from ear to ear because I have now flown my first Navy airplane, and I'm just ecstatic. Well, when I jumped out, came down off the airplane, Bob was standing there, and he kind of got in my face, and he said, okay, either you're the world's greatest natural pilot or you've flown before. And I said, well, I don't think I'm the world's greatest pilot, although one of the greatest fighter pilots, I guess. But anyway, we had, and he said, well, you know, we've got a war on. Things are going to really get going. If we can accelerate you through VT1, then that would, you know, that would really help. And so then I spilled the beans, and he grabbed me by my flight suit and he drugged me into the our flight commander's office and explained to him what was going on. Then we went to the CO's office of VT1, explained to him, and they immediately accelerated me. I soloed a day and a half later after one flight, and they went from there. And the story of my getting fighters, when I graduated at VT1, the assignments came down, and there were no fighter assignments. There were no jet assignments. And I actually had orders to VT2, which was T-28s, which with the Marine Corps, that meant that I was going to be flying helicopters, which for me, you know, I wasn't that coordinated, and there were a lot of, that's a lot of moving parts. And beating the air into submission, you know, was really not my thing. And I wanted to fly fighters. So I talked to Bob Babos about it. I talked to our flight commander. I talked to the CO. And then I went and talked to the senior Marine, who was a buddy of mine who was in my class. It happened to be his dad. And Colonel Sconyers, I explained to him, and I had been to their house a couple of times. And he approved me to go and talk to the Senavantra, who was a 3-star admiral, Admiral Hayward. And so I was told to report to Admiral Hayward's office at 8 o'clock in the morning So I went to Admiral Hayward's office at 8 o'clock sharp. I'm standing there at attention in front of his aide. And I said, "Sir, Cadet Lawrence reporting to the Admiral as ordered." And this big old burly commander, he's highly decorated. He said, "Oh yeah, Cadet Lawrence." He said, "Go over and have a seat. We'll be with you shortly." Well, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, I'm still sitting there. And people are coming and going. And then about that time, this booming voice comes over the system, the intercom system. And he said, "Well, Bob, do I have anything else I need to take care of before I go to lunch?" And the aide said, "Well, Admiral Cadet Lawrence is here to see you." And Admiral Hayward said, "Oh yeah, Cadet Lawrence, send him in." Well, right then and there, I knew I was going to be a one-man weather station in Adak, Alaska. And so I went in and stood at attention in front of the Admiral. And I said, "Sir, Cadet Lawrence reporting to the Admiral as ordered." And he never said, "Welcome, stand at ease, have a seat." I was standing at attention the entire time. And the very first thing he said to me was, "Cadet Lawrence, why can't you go where the Navy orders you to go?" And I thought, yep, I'm going to Adak, ain't no doubt about it. And so then I went into my spiel about, wanting to fly fighters my entire life and blah, 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 blah. And so I went on for about 15 minutes. And finally, and I said, "Admiral, that's why I want to fly fighters." And he still hasn't said anything. I'm still at attention. And he pushes back from his desk. And that was one thing when I walked in his office, I never knew there was a mahogany desk that could be that big. And I never knew that there was that much gold out of Fort Knox, because the Navy 3-star admiral wears a lot of gold. But anyway, he pushed back from his desk, took out this set of orders, and he handed them to me. And he said, "Cadet Lawrence, you carry out these orders." And I said, "Aye, aye, sir." And as I took the orders and pulled them back to me, I saw at the top, it said jet pipeline. And I knew I was going to fly fighters. Wow. And then I floated out of the office. And as I started to leave the office, he said, "Jim," and I turned around and he said, "You make me proud." And I said, "Aye, aye, sir." And then I went out, and the aide was standing there, big grin on his face. And he said, "We've been getting phone calls about you all week long." And he said, "These orders were cut a week ago." And kind of an interesting thing was, many years later, I came home from a flight when I'm in Salt Lake City, and I thought, somebody like Admiral Hayward makes a decision in somebody's life that is monumental, but he never knows the outcome. And so I sat down and I wrote him a 12-page letter. And I called the Annapolis Association, found out where he lived. He lived in Greer, South Carolina. And I sent him that letter. And about 2 weeks later, the phone rings and it's Admiral Hayward. And he and I had a great conversation for at least 2 hours. And he said, "I distinctly remember, believe it or not, you walking into my office." And I'm 19. And he said, "I looked up at you and I thought, my God, they're letting children fly airplanes." So anyway, that's how I ended up going into jets. I'm sorry, that's a little long.
Oh, that's all right, but I want to bring this up too. You were in the last class that did not require a college degree. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, there were, I think, maybe 4 or maybe 5 MARCADs, Marine Aviation Cadets, behind me. And there was only like 3 or 4 NAVCADs, which were Navy cadets that didn't have their, college degrees. You had to pass a battery of college equivalency tests, which would equate to 2 years of college. And I remember Captain Chamberlain, who was the officer selection officer that I dealt with there in Jackson. And I took tests from, everything from English literature to math to physics to the whole 9 yards. And after, turned them all in, and he called me and he said, "Hey, you passed." And I thought, yeah, BS, I didn't pass. They just need pilots. And, but anyway, that's how that transpired. But yeah, we were in the very, very last group.
All right, let me ask you this. I think you went out to the Gulf of Mexico to land on your first aircraft carrier. Is that correct? Out of Pensacola?
That's correct. Yeah, the USS Lexington.
What was it like for you to land on your first aircraft carrier and take off?
It's amazing, Pete. I can remember to this day every second of that first flight. Fortunately, it was clearing 1 million. There was not a cloud within 1,000 miles. The sea was relatively calm. And we went out. I was number 2 in the formation. My good buddy Bob Stamper was number 1. We were led out by an instructor. And then when they gave us signal Charlie, which meant, okay, come on down, it's your time to land. And then, I'm looking down at this ship from about, I think we were around 22,000. And I'm looking at this little bitty ship. I'm going, oh, this is really going to be fun. And so we came back around and we broke and we did 2 touch and goes. And of course, when you land on a carrier, as soon as you touch down, you slam full power in case you get what's called a bolter if your hook skips and you don't catch a wire. And so we did 2 of those. And then our paddles, our LSO, who had trained us for, God, I don't know, 5 weeks, told me, he said, put your hook down, and you go, holy cow. And so I came back around, and Bob Stamper, who since has passed away, God love him, was ahead of me, and Bob got a bolter, but he kept waiting for the hook to grab it and never did. And everybody's screaming at him, power, power, power. Well, he finally firewalled it and got aboard. And then I was the first one to land, so I trapped. And then things happen pretty quick once you trap. You've got to clear the landing area because you've got your buddy rolling in the groove behind you.
What kind of plane were you in? What kind of plane were you in? It
was a T2B Buckeye built by North American. It was a twin engine Buckeye, fortunately, because going out to practice one day, I actually lost my left engine. I didn't lose it. I knew it was still in the airplane, but I lost my oil pressure and I had to shut it down. And went back and, traded it in for another one. So we flew the T2B, which we were in the second class of T2B pilots. Everybody else had been flying the A model that we flew at Meridian at VT7, where John McCain was one of my instructors there, which was rather interesting. Right. But and then, the yellow shirt, the directors taxiing you up, and things are happening pretty quick. And they put you up on the catapult, and you come up, check your engine, check everything going on, check your controls, you'll be ready to go. And you salute the shooter, the catapult officer. And then you get one heck of a ride. Later, when I was flying fighters off the carrier, we'd go from 0 to 170, 180, depending on our load, in about 1.92 seconds. So, it's a pretty good ride. Yeah, taking off from a carrier, there's really no option. I mean, you're going flying, and unless the catapult fails. But that was it, and we did that 10 times, and then we went back to Pensacola.
Well, all right. You served in Vietnam from June 1968 through September of 1969. Tell us about flying the A4 Skyhawk in combat. Then, a crazy person that you are, you volunteered to fly a small Cessna 01 Bird Dogs as a forward air controller. Tell us about these.
Yeah, I did. The A4 Skyhawk, magnificent airplane. I wasn't scheduled to fly the A4. When I reported to my air wing, I was scheduled to fly Phantoms, which is what I had wanted to fly the entire time. And when we got there, 5 Nuggets, new pilots with our brand new wings and our brand new brown bars, we were told, well, they're losing a lot of A4 guys over there, so you guys are all going to go to A4s, which initially I was, really, really disappointed until I flew the A4 for the first time. And then I just fell in love with that airplane. It is just a magnificent airplane. I loved every second of the 27 or 2,800 hours I ended up flying them. But our mission primarily, we went up north sometimes, we went into Laos, but our primary mission was close air support to our ground troops, our Marines, our Army guys, and our Republic of South Vietnam troops. So that was pretty rewarding to go in there and really help those guys when they were in trouble. Then on one mission, I flew with, I was leading a flight of A4s, and I was working with one of the fingerprint bird dog facts, who I happened to be a good friend of mine that I knew from Beaufort. And Don said, after we finished our strike and we're getting our BDA, bomb damage assessment, And Don asked me, because he knew that I had a lot of little airplane time and all this, that, and the other. And so he asked me, he said, Jim, we lost a couple of pilots. Is there any chance you'd volunteer to come up and fly the Bird Dog? And that was an all volunteer mission. You could basically only do it for about 6 months because the loss rate was so high. And I knew Mike Whitehouse, who was the detachment commander. We were attached to VMO 6 at Quang Tree. And I told Don, well, if you need me, I'll be glad to, I'll go ahead and volunteer and come up. Well, I went to the tanker and then got fuel, and we went back and landed at Chula, and I walked into operations, and my skipper met me, Ed Graham, who's just one of the greatest guys on this planet. And skipper looked at me and he said, "What have you done?" And I said, "Well, if you don't have any photographs, you can't prove anything." And he said, "I've got a flash message here for you to report to VMO 6 immediately." He said, "In fact, they're flying a C-130 down here to pick you up in 2 hours." And I said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "Don't you know those guys are getting killed up there?" And I said, "Well, yeah, kind of." I said, that's just one of the flaws in my DNA. Somebody says, "Hey, Jim, we need help." I just go, "Okay." And so anyway, I went running out of there, and a good buddy of mine, Jim Reese, came over to my hooch when I'm frantically packing. And he said, "Where in the world are you going?" And I said, "Well, I volunteered to go up and fly fingerprint FAC and the Bird Dog." And he said, "Well, I'll volunteer to go with you if they need me." And I said, "Reese, you can barely fly the A4. That Bird Dog will kick your butt, because it's a tail dragger, and it had a reputation." But Jim was a great pilot. And there's a story later, unfortunately. But anyway, he said, "Well, I'll go get a Jeep." And I said, "Yeah, right. Yeah. First lieutenant's going to go find a Jeep." Well, about 15 minutes later, he pulls up in a Jeep. I didn't ask where it came from. I didn't want to know. And we went to the terminal, and the C-130 taxis in, and this guy jumps out and he goes, "Lieutenant Lawrence." And I raised my hand. He said, "Come on, sir." And so I jumped on the 130 and went to Da Nang. They had sent a CH-46 down from Quang Tree to pick me up. They were there. I jumped on this 46, went to Quang Tree, got into Quang Tree about 10 o'clock that night, and Don and Mike Whitehouse met me. At 6 o'clock the next morning, I had a Bird Dog strapped to my butt with Steve Palmason, who went on to become a captain with Southwest. And Steve checked me out. I went out and fired a couple of rockets and came back and did a couple of landings. And 2 o'clock that afternoon, I was controlling airstrikes. And it got pretty amazing sometimes. There, even more so than flying the A4, because you were in direct contact with our grunts, and working with those guys was just marvelous. And knowing that what you were doing, you were going to save American lives or South Vietnamese lives, whatever it may be. But it was probably some of the most rewarding flying that I've ever done in my life. It was also, on the other side, some of the scariest moments. We used to fly with the windows open so that we could hear them shooting at us. And we would occasionally shoot back. I had originally carried an M16, but that thing was a piece of junk. So I got an AK-47, which never failed. And so I'd shoot at them out the window, and we would go down to the chow hall and get a glass, and we'd get a grenade, and we'd put a rubber band around the hammer on the grenade and put it in the glass and tape over the top just where the pin was visible. And then you'd pull the pin and throw the glass out at the bad guys, and it'd hit the ground and the grenade would go off. So I'm sure it surprised quite a few of the North Vietnamese when they got bombed by a Bird Dog. But other than that, I ended up flying that for 6 months and then rotated back. In fact, we carried an AO, which was either an infantry or artillery officer occasionally in our back seat, depending on the mission. And my very dear friend who flew my very last mission with me, Norm Billop, came up to replace me from 211, and then I went back to my squadron, my fighter squadron. And unfortunately, 2 weeks later, he and Bob and Norm were shot down and killed. So
when Nomad, you told me this story, but when did you realize they were trying to kill you too?
yeah, well, that happened pretty quick in the A4. We went in against any aircraft site that had shot down a Army CH-47 Chinook, and I rolled in and on this gun site, and of course he's firing at me, and I've got tracers going by my airplane, and I'm sitting there scratching my head, going, this is really serious. And at about that time, a round hit my center windscreen on the A4 was the only one that was bulletproof. Because this 50 cal round hit my, it would have hit me right between the eyes, but it just shattered my front windscreen. And that was kind of the first time that you realize that, this is no game.
Did you, I believe you were in the bird dog when a round came up and hit you on the side of the helmet or something?
Yeah, I had one round. I was controlling, that's what a 50 cal looks like in your airplane. But I was controlling airstrikes with troops in contact, which meant that we had our guys were up against their guys. And I had a lot of respect for the North Vietnamese troops. They were very well disciplined troops, and they were well trained. We did not fight against the Viet Cong up where I was in Northern I Corps. We were fighting the straight North Vietnamese regulars. But anyway, the round came in off my left quarter panel. And fortunately, it was probably, it had to be an AK-47 round, because if it had been a 50 cal round, it would have taken my head off. But it hit the left side of my helmet and kind of ricocheted out the top, which it kind of rang my bell.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, it got your attention.
Amazing.
Hey, Nomad, this is Todd. Do you mind if I ask you a question? I'm looking at this picture. This is you in the bird dog airplane. Are those brown spots on the ground, are they shell craters?
They are. Okay.
Just to give our viewers a sense of just the kind of war that we're fighting here. This is it's a lot of artillery shells being expended, a lot of bombs being dropped from the air.
Tremendous amount.
Yeah. I know, Nomad, I think that you were fibbing just a little bit. You said that you flew missions into Laos. We didn't go into Laos, did we?
No, I'm sorry. I made a mistake.
Yeah, I know you did. All right.
Yeah,
buddy. I remember when Nixon announced that we were going to start bombing Laos and Cambodia. And I said, the countries already look like craters of the moon. Okay.
Oh, yeah, they did. Yeah. Some of the more exciting missions we had were up into the Magia Pass.
Oh, yeah.
Missions called Commando Hunt, and some of the other missions that we flew. One of the hottest, most deadly areas that we flew airstrikes against was in Chipon, there in Laos, where North and South Vietnam and the Laotian border met. And we always joked that the easiest place or easiest way to find Chipon was look at all the glitter of aircraft wreckage on the ground, airplanes that had been shot down. One of the missions, I was leading a 4-ship of A4s, and there were some F-100s below us working. And so we were holding high, getting ready to go. One of the F-100s got hit and burst into flames. And he was able to get about maybe 3/4 of a mile or a mile away from Chipon when he punched out, when he ejected. And I thought, oh, Lord, here we go. This is really going to be something else. And so I put my guys in trail, and I said, okay, get ready, because we got to cover this guy. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this silver and blue Huey appeared, which was Air America. And Air America landed right beside this guy. The guy jumped in the helicopter, and he wasn't on the ground more than about 2 minutes. It was pretty amazing. So anyway.
Air America was CIA, just in case folks didn't know. Todd's playing a video. You want to explain this video?
Well, the first part of the video was the Ashau Valley. This what we're looking at right now, the one to the big one there was called the Razorback. And this is actually looking into Laos. The other place that was prominent there next to the Razorback, there was a place called the Rock Pile, which was basically just a karst with a Marine observation post on top of it. And the observation post had a platform, a wooden platform, just big enough for a Huey to land on. Well, Greg Nelson, who was a dear friend of mine, who volunteered to come up and fly the bird dog, as did Bob Stamper, we were all coming back together one day, and we had the bright idea that we'd give those guys a little morale boost. So we went over and started shooting touch and goes off that platform. And our safety officer, Todd Eikenberry, happened to be coming by on a Huey, and he darn near had a heart attack when he looked over there. And here we are. There's the Razorback, and then to the left of the Razorback is the Rock Pile. These are forward operating bases. Anyway, when we got back to Quang Tree, Todd kind of chewed on us a little bit, but there it is. There's the Rock Pile. Wow. And that was a pretty exciting morning. We thought it was a good idea at the time, being young lieutenants and just dumbing a box of rocks.
What are we watching there?
That's Route 9. That is coming up from, and there's one of our assault helicopters that has a Marine battalion on board. That's a rapid response unit that if, things really start going bad, they'll launch those guys off the ship to go in and reinforce, Marines that may be in trouble, or even Army. We didn't have any problem helping them out either. That's what I wanted to fly when I first went in. I wanted to.
A1E Sky Raider?
Yeah, the Sky Raider, and that's Air Force bird dog. Air Force flew bird dogs and O2s and OV10s. But I'll never forget. They asked me, "Well, what do you want to fly?" And I said, "I'd like to fly Sky Raiders," and they thought I had 3 heads. And they said, "What, don't you want to be a jet pilot?" And I knew that jets were going to be around for a long time, and that's what I told them. And they said, "Well, they're going to be gone by the time you get your wings. So what else do you want to fly?" And I said, "Well, F8s, F4s, A4s." And they said, "Oh, okay, now you've got a brain." So yeah, this is at Da Nang. There's a Sky Raider coming back in.
Yeah, we had Sky Raiders at NKP, and those are good aircraft. They could stay over the target for a long, long time, and they carried more ordnance in weight than the airplane weighed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an amazing, amazing airplane. It was flown
by right there.
Yeah, they're flown by the Sandys, who were the search and rescue guys who were incredibly brave. Those guys and the Jolly Green rescue pilots that flew the rescue helicopters. They just, you can't even describe the courage that those guys had. I had the opportunity, unfortunately, to work with them a couple of times. When we had guys shot down. A couple of times I was the on-scene commander. And then when the Sandys showed up, you'd pass the lead to them. But yeah, the guys flying the Sky Raiders in the Sandys was phenomenal. Yeah,
they were. Jim, I was involved in interdicting Ho Chi Minh Trail for about 18 months. And we lost a lot of good men over there.
Absolutely.
A lot of good men. There was a hell of a war going on in Laos. Matter of fact, President Kennedy said the war will be won or lost in Laos.
I believe it.
And he was right. Absolutely. Todd, do you have the footage of him going into a bomb run on the A4?
Yes, I do. And I will share that. But first, let me share this. I found this picture of the rock pile. I think this is the platform that you're talking about, Nomad.
Yeah, that's it.
So you landed and took off from that, did you?
Yeah, we did touch and goes, and we never missed. We touched down every time.
Oh my gosh! No wonder you got chewed out.
Well, we were lieutenants. We were dumb in a box of rocks.
What did the Army guys say, or did you talk to them?
Oh, the guys on the Marines that were at the observation post, they loved it. I mean, they were cheering us as we came by. Yeah, they thought it was the coolest thing.
Oh, that's fascinating. Todd, you want to show that bomb run?
Yep, I'm going to get right to it. Here we go. I will find it right here.
Yep, this is a Nomad on a bomb run in an A4.
Okay, let's see if this is it. You could let me know if this is right.
Okay.
Hold on. Okay. I'll start sharing it. You can let me know if this is right. Hold on a second. Is this the right one?
That's me strapping in. I just completed a pre-flight. My dad sent me a letter and he said, you know, we're getting films of all these airplanes, but you know, how about you? And so I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll have one of my guys film me doing a pre-flight, getting ready to go out on a mission. And so prior to this scene, I'm going around the A4 checking, you know, everything that I needed to check.
What are those red stars in your helmet?
For every 100 missions, they put a red star on your helmet.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. I wish it had been MiG shot down, but
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
yeah, I wish.
God, you look young.
Well, I had just turned 21.
Wow.
This squadron mate of mine, Ken, had just been shot down, and they were able to recover him. He went out over the South China Sea and able to punch out, even though his airplane was coming apart on him. And you can see he's kind of favoring his left shoulder that he injured on ejection, but it was good to get him back. There was 1 week where we lost 5 guys, and none of them were POWs.
Wow.
So it was great to get Ken back.
This is just wonderful footage.
Oh,
It's
there we
just
go.
like such a privilege to watch this and listen to you describe it.
Oh, no worries there. Yeah, we were pretty lucky. That's one of our A4s, one of my squadron airplanes with Snake and Nape. The silver container there is napalm, and we carried the snake eye bombs, which were usually 500-pound bombs that when you released, the fins popped out to retard the bomb so that we would have time to get clear of the bomb blast. And that's one that's got Zuni rockets, which were really, really good rockets.
How low would you be when you drop the ordnance normally?
Anywhere from 500 feet to 200 feet, and we were doing over 500 knots. There's one of our tankers, great guys. They saved my fanny one day. But we're rendezvousing, their call sign was basketball. And that's actually a picture, it's kind of out of sequence a little bit, but that's actually a picture of me taking off on my my last mission.
Huh.
And that's Mac Greeley, great guy. And then there's A4 coming back. Not sure if this is the one that's got his hook down. No, he made a normal landing. That's just looking at an A4 through my rearview mirror. We carry a pretty good load. And here we are rendezvousing with a tanker.
Oh, wow.
And plugging in.
Huh.
We got diverted one day. A Misty FAC was shot down up in North Vietnam, and we got diverted to go up there and try and cover them and try and get them out. And there were North Vietnamese all over the place, but we finally were able to get them out, get them rescued, because the Sandy guys came up and a flight of Air Force F4s came up. And by the time we pulled off target, Jerry Keller was my wingman, and we looked down and we were out of gas. I mean, we had no gas. And I told the Jollies, they were going feet wet out over the South China Sea. And I told them, don't go very far, because you're getting ready to have 2 more customers. we're out of gas. And about that time, basketball called, and they were forbidden from going north of the Ben Hai River. And he called and said, you know, we're here, we're 30 miles from you. And then the guys that controlled us, Hellborn was our call sign. But anyway, they said basketball is your 070 at 30 miles. And I said, I don't know that we can make it. And basketball, that's me taking off on my last mission, actually. And anyway, we ended up plugging into the, Jerry and I plugged into the C-130. And we had maybe, I don't even want to know how much fuel we had left when we plugged in. But the basketball guys violated every rule that they had to fly under. And they came up and saved us.
There was a lot of C-130 boys that broke the rules and regulations.
Big time.
Slave pilots.
Great guys, great airplanes. Some of my classmates flew 53s. Some of them flew Hueys. Some flew the 46. That's me coming back from my last mission.
Wow.
Mark Bonner was my wingman. Great guy.
Nomad, how did you feel coming back from your last mission? I mean, did you feel like, you know, good or bad?
Mixed emotions.
Mixed emotions. Okay.
Yeah, really mixed emotions. That's me climbing down from my last one, knowing that normally we would stop flying about a week prior to us going home because we had guys shot down and killed that were getting ready to go home. But I begged the COs, I just wanted to fly, and that was just it. I just wanted to fly and do what I could. And that's Mark, and I'm sorry the lighting wasn't adjusted quite right on that camera. But it was mixed emotions. It's, you know, after an intense 13 months, the intensity took a little while to wear out. But then I forgot my mission card. I had to go back and get it. But mixed emotions, really.
Wow.
So shortly after this footage, you're headed back home.
Yeah, I went home and I was assigned to VMAT 102 at Yuma to train pilots in combat tactics to go over. And one thing that I was 21 years old and I saw my 22nd birthday over there, and I had some of the things that happened you really had a hard time with. I know I did, but I finally learned to not understand things, but I learned to accept them.
Right.
Good.
And then Fate is the Hunter. I read that book when I think I was 9 or 10 years old. And so it was, you learn that, fate is the hunter.
You finished college but served in the reserves. Tell us about your duties in Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan.
Yeah, I couldn't get it right. But I had, after I went back to college, got my degree, and still flying fighters with the Marines. And then I left the Marine Corps and joined and transferred to the Navy because they discovered I knew my parents. So I had to transfer to the Navy and flew A-7s. And we got to go in the Lexington, the Forrestal, and the Eisenhower. And then my Navy squadron went away. It was decommissioned and transitioned into A-6s. And CAG came in one day and said, well, we're going to transition the junior, 2 junior pilots, and we're going to transition to 3 senior pilots. Well, I had already screened for command and I had already made commander. So I knew I wasn't going to, get to make the transition into the A6, which I would have gladly done. But a good friend of mine, Dave Marshall, Pig Dog. Pig Dog was a Marine. We had flown together in Vietnam, and we had flown together in the reserves. Well, he was a squadron commander of an A-10 unit in the Air Force, there in National Guard. So I called him, talked to him, and anyway, long story short, I was accepted into that unit. The only reason I got accepted was I'd gone to Top Gun. I'd graduated from the Air Force Fighter Weapons School, which is 6 months of the most intense training I've ever been through. Combat was a piece of cake compared to that. And anyway, I went up there and they said, well, you've already screened for command. You're basically an 05, which is a lieutenant colonel. And, we don't have any at the top of the rank structure there. Says, is there any way that you can become a junior? Can you get a reduction in rank? Well, occasionally, you cross roads and there's a really good buddy of yours that happens to be in a really good position. Well, Phil Kelly, General Kelly, happened to be the head of the Air National Guard. And he was a very dear friend of mine. And I picked the phone up and I called Phil and I talked to him, told him what was going on. Long story short, I was out of the Navy and in the Air National Guard in a day and a half. And then we flew the A-10.
All right, the A-10 Warthog, that airplane has really gotten to the hearts of the American public. Tell us about that A-10 Warthog. There you go. Tell us about that airplane.
Yeah, the A-10 is an amazing airplane. And you can see that 30 millimeter gun up there. Just first time you fire that gun, it just waters your eyes. And it is just deadly. We call this A-10 Peanut because it was a test camouflage job on it, but it was gloss, so they could see you coming from 30 miles away. That didn't work out real well. But the A-10, just an incredible airplane to fly, and it was a stick and rudder airplane. 450 knot airplane in a dive going straight down. And other than that, we flew combat missions in Bosnia. We flew combat in Iraq, Southern Watch, which was pretty interesting. The thing about Bosnia, we were based in Aviano, Italy, and when the Serbs shelled the marketplace in Sarajevo, NATO finally got the guts to do something, which surprised all of us. But anyway, long story, I'll make it short. We had our briefing. We were told, go into crew rest immediately. We did. Came back at midnight and we were briefed. Our target was the largest armor repair facility in all of the Balkans. It was a huge factory where they repaired all of the tanks and armored personnel carriers. And that was our mission. We took off, 12 of us took off. I'm leading the second go. We go down the Adriatic. And of course, we didn't have radar in the A-10. So we were vectored by the ground control intercept guys to our tanks. And we topped off our fuel and then went into a holding point just off the Croatian coast. And then sun came up and Magic, who was the AWACS, came up and I was Mako 27 and they said Mako 27 go green, which meant go to secure radio. And so I went to secure radio and they said you're cleared weapons free, which meant we're going to war. And I went, well, kiss my grits. And so I acknowledged and then I went back and called everybody over to green and I said proceed to your targets and may God be with us. And so we went and my target I held while two of our A-10s were working. They finished. And then I rolled in and it was utterly incredible. My wingman, Dan Peabody, who was an attorney, so we called him counselor, told counselor to hold high. I rolled in, I locked up the tread assembly building with my Maverick, which was an infrared guided missile. And just as I'm getting ready to squeeze the trigger, counselor starts yelling at me, Nomad, Nomad, Sam, break, break. Well, that's the first time Dan had ever been in combat, first time he'd ever seen a really no kidding Sam. And it was coming up behind me. Of course, I couldn't see it. And normally if you say something like that, you go, Nomad Sam left 6 o'clock, break left or break right. Well, I just broke left. I put about 7 Gs on the airplane and I picked the missile up. Long story short, then Dan called me and said, Nomad, break right, 2 Sams, 2 o'clock. So anyway, I ended up defeating 5 of the Sams that they fired at me. And this is all on the one pass. And I had 4 anti-aircraft sights opened up on me. So I had these giant orange golf balls zipping by my airplane. I had flak going off every place, including some of the missiles detonating. And this one anti-aircraft site and one missile site was out of range of the British artillery near Mount Igman. And they had been able to fire. That's the other thing. I've got artillery rounds coming in. And I'm going, this is just not my day. I'm not going to make it out of here. And so I rolled in on this anti-aircraft site that kept firing at me. And I mean, literally, I could have read a book by the tracers going by my canopy. And this 6 SAM came up. And anyway, I was able to defeat it. And then I took on this AAA site. And it was like the gunfight at the OK Corral. I figured, well, if I'm going down, I'm taking somebody with me. And so I threw my gun on, and we carried 1,142 rounds in the 30 millimeter cannon, 7 barrels, fired 70 a second. And I just held the trigger down, and I fired over 940 something rounds, and got a good secondary explosion on the SAM site, got a good secondary explosion on the anti-aircraft site, and then decided, it's about time to get the hell out of here. And during this, my wingman had called me and said, Nomad, I'm hit. And I'm going, oh, great. Because he and his wife were expecting triplets. And I knew that if I got Dan killed, that Kathy was going to kill me. So I ordered him, I said, go feet wet, exit the area now. So anyway, I ended up rendezvousing on him, checked him over. What happened was he had a bad round in the gun, and it exploded internally. So anyway, we went back to Aviano and landed, and I just happened to be, in fact, this is a picture of me taxiing out on that mission. Coming back in on that mission. I happened to be in my own airplane, 626, which is kind of interesting. I'm a Gemini. I was born on June 2nd, 1946. So 626 was just natural for me to have that airplane. Well, I knew that if I got shot down, that my plane captain, Tim Keenan, he was going to kill me. So things were just not stacking up real good. And anyway, when I got in, Timmy ended up painting the 6 SAMs on the side of the airplane. So
you got a photo of that, Todd?
I think I do. Yes.
But it was his wife was one of our crew chiefs also. And she came running up the side of my airplane, gave me a big hug. She was crying. And I said, yeah, I kind of thought they had me there for a little bit. But it was a rather exciting morning.
There you go.
Now, Nomad, when you say that you defeated the SAMs, what does that mean? Does that mean you evade them, or you actually are able to shoot them down somehow?
No, I evaded them. What you wanted to do, and the guys that flew up into North Vietnam really came up with a tactic. I only had one SA-2 fired at me, thank goodness. But what you would try and do is you could pick the missile coming up, and of course it's doing Mach 3, so it's all on the timing. And what you would try and do is put the missile at your 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock, and then as it came close, and once again, like I said, it's timing, you do basically a barrel roll around it so that you try and make the missile cut the corner to where it can't cut that corner. And its gyros tumble and it loses guidance. So that's what I meant by defeating them. No, I don't think I could have shot one down at Mach 3. I would have tried.
I'm just betraying my ignorance here. About
No, that's not.
Yeah.
So anyway, Tim painted that on the side of my airplane, and that airplane is somewhere in another A-10 squadron, but my understanding is that is still painted on the side of the airplane.
Oh, how great.
Wow.
How great.
Well, that's a good reminder for any pilot that flies it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the Yosemite Sam on the cross-eyed camel carrying the flag was my my symbol that I really liked. So I put that on all my airplanes.
All right, 608 total combat missions. You're a very lucky man, Nomad.
No doubt about it. A lot of my buddies weren't.
I know it. And you have logged over 41,250 hours behind the controls of many, many aircraft. How in the world did you do that?
Persistence, I guess. I don't know. I love flying. I've always loved flying. To me, as corny as it sounds, the sky is really a sanctuary. I love being up there. And that's a picture of me that was on the front page of the Jackson Daily News there in my hometown of Jackson, Mississippi, at Meridian, VT7. So that picture was there. I was 19, what can you say?
Love it. I love it.
But I was very fortunate. You come to some crossroads in your life, and seems like there's always somebody there, or you get divine intervention, which I've had numerous times, or I wouldn't be here. And you just get lucky, and you keep flying. I've been blessed with great health, thank you God, and I hope to keep going.
You still own an airplane, right?
I have my RV-8 that I built 21 years ago.
Tell the folks what that is.
It's a kit-built airplane that it's a tail dragger, and I owned a bird dog for a little while, but the Commemorative Air Force wanted to buy it, so I let them have it. And then my RV-8 is an airplane that I built, and I had some help building it. Took me 17 months to build the airplane.
There you go.
And there she is, and that is it's so much fun. Poor little airplane doesn't know how to fly straight and level. It gets real confused if it's flying straight and level for too long. In fact, I was just flying it 2 days ago, and spent most of the time, upside down.
Yeah, are those 50 caliber machine guns in the wing?
Yeah, I figured, it's a fighter, so it's got to have guns, and so I had the guy paint the guns on it, and every marking on that airplane has a meaning. Both of the squadrons that I was in had checkerboard or red rudders, and then the red cap on the horizontal or vertical stab was in my A-10 squadron, and it had the 131 stars. The Flying Tigers, just commemorative to them, and then the Desert Storm guys, that's why the Desert Camouflage, and then there's Yosemite Sam and Nomad on the side.
Wow.
Fun airplane to fly. It's got a 200 horse fuel injected engine, and I just have so much fun flying it. She's 21 years old.
Wow. Oh, well, there's your P-51. Tell us about flying the P-51 Mustang.
Oh my
World
God.
War II's greatest fighter.
It was incredible experience. And this just occurred in April. Company that I was scheduled to fly for, which didn't work out, but anyway, it's another story. I went down to Stallion 51 at Kissimmee, Florida. Incredible outfit, amazing people, and flew the P-51 in a week of the most intense flying and training I have ever gone through in my entire life. We did not fly the Mustang, and Steve Lamore was my instructor, and they taught me to fly this airplane not only in its envelope, but outside of its envelope, and then how to bring it back in to the envelope. And the airplane is absolutely just magnificent. The guy in the back is a guy named Lee Louderback, who Lee's given a thumbs up. This is my check ride. I'm taxiing back in after my check ride, and Lee's given a thumbs up. Lee has probably, well, there's no doubt about it, he has more Mustang time than anybody on the planet has ever had, literally in the thousands and thousands of hours.
Wow.
And he's giving a thumbs up to all of the Stallion 51 people who I got to know really well, who are waiting for me to come in. And he's giving them a thumbs up. Yeah, he passed my check, passed his check ride. And I just can't even tell you what an amazing airplane that is. And when I took off the first time from the front seat, your first flight, you're in the back seat, but it's a dual control airplane. And even though I'm in the back seat, I did the takeoff, and Steve was my instructor. Great guy, really knowledgeable, super, super instructor. And I took off in the Mustang, and I'm putting the gear up, and all of a sudden it was like I just took a Mustang off and went out and just did everything conceivable in that airplane. And Lee gave me a very, very, very thorough check ride, because they're not going to turn you loose in a Mustang unless they're comfortable that you're not going to do something stupid. And it was so funny taxiing out. I had, at that point on my check ride, I had maybe 12 and a half hours in the Mustang. and Lee has something like 18,000 hours in the Mustang. So I told myself, please don't do anything that he has never seen before.
It's an amazing aircraft. That had to be one of the thrills of your life.
It absolutely was. It and is. The airplane itself is it's just an amazing airplane. And
I've had P-51 pilots say, Nomad, that when they strap that airplane, it's like they became a part of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like the A4. When you strap the A4 on, you're basically, just strapping. It's like putting your favorite tennis shoes on. Whereas the A7 was a little bigger. The F8 Crusader was bigger. But, you still got that same feeling that, you're putting on your favorite set of tennis shoes.
Wow. P-51, boy, do I envy you.
Yeah, I envy me too.
I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I want to open it up for questions. I know folks may have a lot of questions, but give us your final thoughts on your combat assignments, your long career in aviation, and would you do it over again?
Absolutely. If they call me right now before they put the phone down, I'd be standing there. I've been very, very fortunate. Been into some pretty exciting moments. There were times when I honestly didn't think that things were going to work out. And they did. For my buddies, some of them, it didn't work out. There again, I mentioned that I learned to not understand some things, but I learned to accept them. And a lot of that was there. So I was very, very, very fortunate to have the career that I've had. I hope to continue flying as long as the good Lord will let me.
I hope you can too, Nomad. One last, how many different aircraft have you flown? Do you know the number?
No, I don't. It's a few.
And you have trained Chinese pilots too, right?
Yes, when I came back from Afghanistan, Boeing asked me to come to work for them to train pilots in the new 787 Dreamliner. So I checked out in the 787 and then spent a lot of time in Shanghai and Singapore and in London and in Doha. I trained pilots basically all over the world.
Assess the Chinese pilots for me.
Well, I'm not known for my diplomacy. The Chinese pilots that I trained, the guys that could, if I could take them out of the automated world, out of the autopilot world, the guys that could fly had been Chinese military pilots, most of them MiG fighter pilots, which was really interesting when they found out I was a fighter pilot. I mean, we trained all our lives to kill each other.
Yeah.
And now I'm training them to fly the 787. Right. The guys that were not former military, yeah, they had some struggles.
Okay, good enough. Todd, I'd love to open this up for some questions from folks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I see a couple pilots here, Ben and Larry. I don't know. And also a couple of your old friends, Lynn and Ginger. I don't know if they have anything to add. These are people who've been, you've known for a long time.
Hey, Lynn.
Good and bad.
Go ahead.
Hey, Larry.
God, if nobody else wants to talk, you know that I will.
Absolutely. Yeah. I figured you'd have some questions or comments.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, a nice job. Nice explanation, everything you did. I flew the F4 as a Wizzo and pilot. Wizzo in Vietnam pilot. I've been to Aviano. I've been doing all those kinds of things. And then I flew the A-10, a couple other airplanes in between. But what were they shooting at you? The missiles, you said the 6 missiles that you defeated, what were they? That was after my time. I mean,
yeah, as best I could tell. And first of all, you have great cojones being a Wizzo sitting in the back seat and letting somebody fly you around. But anyway, I know that 3 of them were SA-7s.
Yeah.
They were all heat seekers.
Yeah.
And 2 I'm pretty sure were SA-16s. And the third one was probably an SA-16.
Yeah.
But the scary thing about the SA-16 was it had flare rejection.
Yeah.
But that was
that's kind of where I was going. Because if you did you pump chaff and flares? I mean, when you were because as you know, the A-10 had a ton of them.
Yeah, we only carried flares. We didn't carry any
really?
chaff. We knew the Serbs had 2 SA-6 mobile sites, but we had weasel airplanes all over us covering. So we figured that the biggest threat for us was going to be the heat seekers.
Yeah,
which turned out to be true.
Yeah, I was just wondering if they were all SA-7s or if there were other radar guided type. Yeah.
No, didn't have any radar. None of my raw gear lit up. The reason that I'm pretty sure that at least 2 of them, and I'm pretty sure 3 of them, were SA-16s was when I maneuvered, it started turning, whereas the SA-7s kind of went straight.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, nice job, by the way. Welcome home.
Oh, thanks. Welcome home to you too. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah, sure. Mark, I see you have your hand up.
Once again, I feel like I'm sitting back here not really knowing anything about aircraft. As close as I got to one Nomad was walking past one in Da Nang, but they were awesome back at that point. But I served in Ashaw Valley with the 1st Air Cav, Operation Delaware, long after you Marines went in and tamed it down a little bit, but it was still a pretty rough place to go. And what you've done is you've brought back memories to me tonight, talking about the bird dog and the way that it came in and led the AOs and led the artillery in there that I had totally forgotten about. You know, we were looking at the landing strip at Aloy, so that was our concentration at that point, trying to secure that. And coming in with that, I had forgot all about the A-Force coming in, all of the strafing, everything they did. And tonight, as you're doing that, my brain is just, well, it bounces any way you look at it, but it was just bouncing. And I a marvelous job. I commend you guys for a set of kahunas that you got to push around in a wheelbarrow, because I could never do that.
Well, you did a darn good job too. I know we participated Operation Dewey Canyon, when the Army, you guys came up from the south and the Marines came down from the north, down all through the Ashaw Valley, which, as you said, Mark, that was really big guy Indian country. Yeah. I had a mission in the bird dog where there was a certain area that I just had a hunch about it. You know how you get that sixth sense about something? But I was so busy working with the 9th Marines coming down that day that I didn't have time to go there. But when I went back to the squadron, I told our scheduler, I said, put me on the first go the next morning. And they did. And I requested an AO, and Jerry Martin was my AO. And we went back to, and I told him about it. I said, there's just something about this that is just, something's weird. We've got to go to this area. So I went down to the area, and all of a sudden, long story short, I spotted about 8 trucks, 2 armored personnel carriers, a bunch of bulldozers, and North Vietnamese troops running around like an anthill. And we went after them big time.
And that Nomad was in late January, early February of '68. Is that when?
I believe that was Dewey Canyon was in, I want to say 69.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were in there in April of '68. It was the first combat assault I did. Whenever I came out of new boot camp with the 1st Cav, that was the first helicopter ride I ever had.
Oh, welcome aboard.
They had a few anti-aircraft in the belly of the beast there that took out a couple of birds as we went in, and it was a scary situation. But then as we got settled in and developed, you guys came in and just helped us tremendously. So once again, thanks, and what a wonderful presentation again tonight.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I ended up being the first strike against Hamburger Hill when you guys were on Hamburger Hill. I got diverted to go in there. In fact, I almost died because I was focused so much on making my bomb run that when I pickled, I looked up and all I could see was the side of the hill. And you're talking about one tremendous pull, and actually went down this ravine, knife edged. But yeah, the 101st was on Hamburger Hill, and you guys were absolutely magnificent. You were marvelous.
Wow.
Help an old grunt understand what a pickle is.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
when
I was afraid to ask. Mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, a pickle is not a jar of things that you eat. Pickle in fighter terms is when you push the bomb release button.
Ah.
So it's a bomb release button, and we call it a pickle. So I have no idea why.
I thought maybe it was something on a Christmas tree or something. Who knows?
No, it's just some weird pilot thing.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Mark.
And Ben Wright taught me a while back about the flares, why you shoot the flares, and how the idea is, just for people who, I don't understand this fully, but this is what Ben explained to me here. You fire the flares in order to divert the missiles, correct? That because they seek the heat or they seek the
Correct.
light.
This is a heat-seeking missile. Yeah, and the heat-seeking missile, what you want to try and do, and if you look at the A-10, you've got the dual rudder, the horizontal stabs and vertical stab. They actually kind of form a protection of your engine exhaust as best it can. But anyway, the reason behind the flare is that the intensity of the flare is greater than the exhaust of your engine. So you hope that the missile will bite on the flare and not come after you. Although the Russians and the Chinese, and don't get me started on China, they developed what we call flare rejection missiles like the SA-16. And it would originally lock on to the flare, but then the missile would say, oh, okay, that's a flare. I'm not going after that. I'm going back after where I was.
Right.
So basically that's what it is. The flare has more intensity, more heat intensity than your exhaust, hopefully.
Right. Right. Ken Rizicki, I know you had a couple questions here in the chat. Do you want to ask them?
Yeah, Tim, first of all, welcome home, brother.
Oh, welcome home.
I am just totally amazed by what pilots can do. And you have a wonderful presentation today. I thank you for that. I was in the Army and I was up in Fubai in late 68, early 69. Just wondering if you were familiar at all with the 220th Aviation group.
Absolutely.
Up there.
Cat killers.
Cat killers, exactly right, yes. And you may also be familiar with a book written by a fellow by the name of Jim Hooper. It's called 100 Feet Over Hell.
I'm actually in that book.
Ah, really? Okay.
Yeah, I know Jim very well.
Right.
And when his brother Bill got wounded, I was actually at Dong Ha refueling and rearming my airplane. I look up and I see these two bird dogs coming in, one being escorted. So that immediately tells you that the guy in the lead's got a problem. Anyway, I took a bunch of pictures of Bill coming in. I took a picture of the guys pulling him out of the cockpit. And Charlie Finch, who was also a cat killer, and I were flying a 757 one day, and we got to talking about it. And it turns out that Charlie was the guy escorting Bill. And so, yes, I'm very familiar with the 220, a great bunch of guys. We trained those guys how to do airstrikes. So I'm very familiar with the cat killers. Great bunch of guys.
Were you familiar at all with Mac Bird? He was a pilot, a cat killer, and his backseat was Kevin O'Brien.
No,
At any rate, they as you know, the officers club in the evening, there was a lot of noise there. There's always a lot of singing, a lot of laughing, and a lot of off-color jokes and conversation. At any rate, one evening, I walked in and it was as quiet as a church. And down in Fubai, the Radio Shack was in the back room of the officers club, and all you could hear was one of the other pilots trying to raise the pilot that hadn't come in yet. And evidently darkness fell, and he may have crashed into the side of a mountain or something. But that was Hugh Bird and BYRD, Hugh Bird Jr. And Kevin O'Brien was his artillery observer. At any rate, I wear his bracelet because they apparently never did find either one of them.
Right.
But if anybody wants to know what they actually did, a real good description is in that book. I mean,
That is a great book, really good book.
yeah, it is. And Todd, if I can I read a paragraph from it, the very first one?
Yes, yeah, please do.
Okay, whenever I talk to someone who was in Vietnam, and especially someone I knew over there and haven't seen for 30 years or more, it's amazing how time and distance evaporate and we get slammed right back into the feelings and thoughts we had then. Sometimes a smell or sound will rekindle it. One fine spring day several years ago, we had the office windows open at Fort Monroe, and a Huey flew over with that distinctive walk, walk, walk sound that we heard so much in Vietnam. No one else seemed to notice, but when I looked up from my desk, absorbing the memories that invaded the otherwise placid morning, I saw a colleague and fellow vet staring at the window. We exchanged a knowing smile, acknowledging an awareness that escaped everyone else in the room. It wasn't necessary to say anything, but we both knew what the sound of that helicopter had awakened in the other, and we knew that it could not be explained to anyone who was not there.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, that's a sound I'll never forget, is the sound of the Huey.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Thanks, Todd. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, sir.
Nomad, are you familiar with the Army Aviation Heritage Foundation?
I am. There's one unit down at Terra Field.
Yeah, I'm really tight with those guys. I used to take my wife out there. She passed about 3 years ago, but
I remember that.
she loved to fly on that Huey. I mean, and she got so used to that whoop, whoop, whoop sound, and she loved it. And I got a photo of her coming off the Huey last time she flew. And I remember for the rest of my life, she got off that, and I said, "Boy, you look like you had a good time." She said, "Shoot, that's better than sex." Okay. and I smiled. Okay. And I said, "Wait just a minute here. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been replaced by a Huey." Okay. And she saw the expression on my face and she said, oh, honey, I didn't mean it that way. Besides, you still have a cute tail rotor.
Yeah. In fact, I've been thinking about going down there. I understand they've got a bird dog, and I may go down there and talk to them about that. But
Well, they got some Cobra gunships too, and
Yep.
they will take you on one kind of ride.
oh yeah,
It's a great. I'm sorry. Come on. Anybody else got some questions? Come on here.
I just want to say, people might, but Pete, you did a wonderful two-part article on Nomad for the newspaper, and I read it, and one quotation, which I think I'll always remember, and I thought I would just put it here because it's the best description of what it's like to fly off a carrier deck. I shoved my head into the headrest and then experienced one of the coolest feelings in the world. Just before launch, the airplane actually squats from the tension. You can picture the airplane. I hold on to the handle and then whoosh, I go from 0 to 140 in 1.9 seconds. Let me describe the sensation. Absolutely exhilarating. I guess terrifying might be the other.
no, it's terrifying if the catapult doesn't work. Yeah, that's an incredible feeling. And like I said, when the airplane comes under tension, the airplane literally squats, and that is the coolest feeling. And then when the catapult officer gives a signal to launch, I think the worst deck I ever landed on was pitching 26 feet. And I was in an A7, and I'm leading flight of 2. We came by the carrier, and we're down around 600 feet. And we go 20 seconds or so, pass a bow and break, come around. And as we went by the ship, I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was just something that wasn't quite right. Yeah, these are T2s. This is a VT7. But we went by the carrier, and then we went downwind. I put my gear down, put my flaps down, put my hook down. And I'm still trying to see, there's just something that is not right about the picture. Well, it finally dawned on me that there was no wake behind the carrier, and paddles came on, the LSO came on and said, okay, 99 Salties, Salty was our call sign. We've got about 35 or 40 knots over the deck, and the ship is just maintaining steerage. And just enough to keep the rudder effective. Well, one of the gouges that we used to use is when you roll out on final about a quarter of a mile behind the boat, you'd kind of put the wake of the ship under your armpit. And of course, you're landing on the angled deck. And it was, fortunately, when I came in, you had about a 20-second window when the ship crested and was stable. And that's when you had to be coming across the back of the ship, the round down. And one of the funniest things I ever saw in one of the round downs, it said, if you can read this, add power. And that was something to encourage you that you don't want to get slow coming in board the boat. But actually, this is John McCain. I'm in the back seat of this T2. John McCain is flying the T2. He was giving a check ride, and he was my instructor. And he said, well, you're getting ready to start formation. Why don't you jump in the back seat and, come take a look. And I said, well, can I bring my camera? And he said, yeah, you can bring a camera. So I did.
Oh, wow.
So I took my film here.
Wow.
This is
that's
at
so
Meridian.
cool.
There's Greg Nelson, great guy, went on to become a doctor, one of my closest buddy. Ken on the right actually got hurt pretty bad in an F4. These are F9 Cougars. This is at VT23 at Kingsville, Texas, where we're at advanced flight training, getting our wings. They were pushing us pretty hard. Number 2 there, the wingman is way wide. It needs to be a whole lot closer. But we finished a 20-week program in 15 weeks.
Wow.
Was that because of Vietnam? They were trying to rush you? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And this is a single seat. When we were flying the single seater, I mean, we were just so cool. No more 2-seaters, but
Right.
and of course, this is back in Vietnam again in the A4.
Hmm.
Wow. Do we have any more questions, Todd?
Let's see. Any more questions here? I'll go check the Facebook side.
I just asked one way there. Nomad, what squadron, A-10 squadrons were you in?
I was in the 104th Fighter Wing and the 131st Fighter Squadron.
Neither one. Okay. Nope. Never touched them. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Great squadron. Really great squadron.
Were you stationed at Aviano or Bentwaters?
We were at, when we were activated, it was an Air National Guard squadron.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we got activated and we always went to Aviano.
Yeah. I spent Cold War time in the F4 at Aviano. Or Senies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Well,
All right.
well.
Take it.
Yeah, we got activated twice. The one where we actually got into the fight was when they had shot numbnuts down. And I probably shouldn't say that about him, but anyway, that's when we got activated over there and, went after him.
Hey, I was wondering.
That's my mom, by the way.
Yeah, I was wondering, Nomad, this is you and your mom. This is after you came back from Vietnam?
Just back from Vietnam. In fact, it was my first time home after I got back. And in fact, I'd flown an A4 in, and yeah, that's my mom. And there's the young, goofy-looking lieutenant.
You look so young, and you're, at this point, you're a very seasoned combat veteran. Were your parents very, very proud of you?
Yeah, they question my judgment sometimes, but
No doubt.
But for the most part, I think they sure were. They were my biggest fans, actually. Well, I had another one. Lynn was a big fan too. She really helped me through all of that those times. So
And
You
Lynn
know,
is with us
Nomad,
tonight.
you came back, you were 22, is that correct?
22, yep.
And if we can recall during World War II, like B-17 bombers, they were like 18 and 19 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, for the last 7 years prior to the China virus, I was flying a B-17 with the Liberty Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Bunch of incredible guys that I was flying the B-17 with. And one of the greatest thrills for us was that we would have these guys, like you said, Pete, when these guys were flying B-17s or a crew member on the B-17, they were 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yep.
And it was amazing. Now they're in their 80s or 90s. And the second they step back on that B-17, they're 18, 19, and 20 again.
They are.
It was just phenomenal. And what wonderful, incredible people.
I have flown with them several times.
Yeah.
And the B-17 to me, it's legendary. It was a great bomb and everything, but what struck me was that it's so damn slow.
Yeah, it was, even though it had 4 engines, it was pretty slow, and it kind of handled like the Empire State Building. It did not have any boosted controls, so we said it was all fly-by-wire, you know, just the cables. And
Yeah.
it took, after flying it all day long, you know, you didn't go to the gym that night.
Yeah, well, I talked to a B-24 pilot. He flew in a B-24 at Terra Field one time. And I said, I heard some things about the B-24 Liberator. How does it fly, sir? He said, it's like driving an 18-wheeler with 18 flat tires.
That's a good one. Yeah, and the thing about the B-24 was it actually carried more bombs and went further than the B-17. That's why a lot of action in the Pacific. But yeah, that's a fun thing. You get a B-17 guy and a B-24 guy started and just sit back and laugh. They just go at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
Good airplane, though.
Amazing airplane.
And you also have an old friend, Ginger, on tonight. I just want to say hello. You've known her since you were a baby, literally, right?
Yeah, well, like I said, Ginger and I actually, we literally grew up together. Our families were very, very, very close. And I have a picture of she and I in the crib, and I think we're maybe 3 months old, maybe. And like I said before, I kind of jokingly say it's the first girl I ever slept with. But yeah, Ginger and I go way, way back.
And Ginger, I mean, you can confirm his lack of judgment sometimes with, you followed him throughout his flying career, huh? No.
Yeah, Lynn kind of, I would get these really wonderful tapes from Lynn, and really hearing her voice was really very soothing, and at some very critical times, boy, it sure made a difference. But yeah, she was with me on 432 missions.
Wow. Wave at us, Lynn.
Wow.
There we go.
That is so great. How great. Do you still have those tapes, Nomad?
I don't, I think Lynn still has them.
Don't throw them away, Lynn.
I don't think she burned them.
Those are historic documents, artifacts. Well, what a wonderful evening. Thank you, Pete, and thank you, Nomad.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate everything that you guys do for the veterans. You know, it means a lot to the guys like me. And it was tough when we came home, but you know we had done what we needed to do and why we did it. And we did it for each other. And, you know, we did it for God and country, but we did it for the guy that was flying next to us, or the guy that was in the foxhole next to us. So,
Well, welcome home, Nomad.
thank you. Thank you. You too.
And
Great
Jim,
interview.
I'm going to make sure that you get our emails with our schedule updates, and please join us anytime. We'd love to have you come on and share more if you'd like.
Well, thank you, Todd. I appreciate it. And I really appreciate you helping me figure this Zoom thing out, because
Yeah, we did it.
I'm
said I
computer illiterate.
He said I can fly the most advanced airplane in the world, but getting on Zoom is a challenge.
Yeah, Nomad, remember now, I do have 20 hours in a Cessna 150. So if you need any more flying lessons, just let me know.
Hey, I'm always looking for good help.
Hey, Pete and Nomad, this is Vis, just checking in the net. Thanks for another great war story. I like your shirt, the one that you show. Yes, the AN 6530 goggles with John Wayne. Stand up a little bit.
Okay.
All right. Hey, made my day. Thanks a lot.
Flying
I
I
no fly.
salute you guys, and thanks for another great war story. Keep the history
Hey,
alive.
Vis, how are you, sir?
Another great day to excel. You know that.
I know that, Vis. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Vis. Vis was in Latvia. Is that correct, Vis?
That's
Latvia?
right. You got your history right.
Okay, he was under the communist rule. They actually were glad that the Nazis came in and took over their country. Then when the Russians kicked the Nazis out, he went with the Germans to Germany, was in bomb shelters, dodging American bombs and British bombs, stayed in a relocation camp for like 12 years, got to the United States, and Vis Kaminis retired from the United States Army, 2 tours in Vietnam as lieutenant colonel.
Yes, we would love to have you on.
Yeah, guys like that are the guys that you need to have.
Pete,
And if you can find any of the dust off medevac helicopter guys too, they were incredible.
I've been trying to get Vis on my radio program for like 5 years.
well, come on, Vis. You've got a great voice for radio. You're good. This would be great. Oh man, I'd love to hear your story. Love to hear it. Okay, Pete and I will work on you.
We'll work on you. I would like to say this, Todd. Folks, join us next week. I have Bob Ratoni with me. He's a Holocaust survivor, has one heck of a story to tell. Please join us.
Yes. Yes. And you can go to veteransarticle.com and to read the latest Pete Mecca articles, and also to connect to America's Web Radio, where he has his weekly radio show, Veteran Story. And you could also buy these 2 wonderful books that Pete has for sale. And they are truly wonderful. Veterans, Stories from America's Best, and then Fights Like a Girl, stories of women warriors.
Yeah, please buy a couple so I can keep playing poker.
You just got to start winning, Pete. That's all.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I hope to see you Monday night for the airborne birthday. All right.
Thank you,
All right.
Nomad.
Good night, everybody.
Great.